Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Itinam Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavari Aschatya Rishatarine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavari Aschatya Rishatarine Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Jaya Shri Krishna Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Krishna Chaitanya Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Shiva Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada ki, Samaveta Bhaktivinoda ki, Jainata Gaur Premanandi, Krishna Padaya, Krishna Salavaya, Srimati Salavaya. Hare Krishna, nice to be here in New York again. So hopefully you can understand my unusual accent. I come from a place called Australia, which is practically the other side of the earth from here. So it's a bit of a ways away, but still. So I've been here for the last 3 days and I've been giving some classes on deity worship. So I asked Braj Mahan, what should I speak about tonight? And he asked me to speak about a deity worship verse. Surprise, surprise. So, in the 9th chapter of the Gita, this is called the most confidential knowledge. And Krishna is explaining to Arjuna various aspects of knowledge, but ultimately he comes to the point of surrender to him and how to do that. Because he's talking about, people who worship devatas and, what results they get and things like that. But he gets to the point of saying, but if you worship me, this is what you'll achieve. So I'm going to read a few verses from that. This is verse 26 through to 28 from the 9th chapter of the Gita. It's okay? And there's probably verses you know well if you've read Bhagavad Gita. Should I just read them? Okay, so Patram Pushpam Param Toyam Yomi Bhaktya Prayachati Tadaham Bhakti Pahritam Ashtami Prayatatmana. If one offers me with love and devotion a leaf, a flower, a fruit, or water, I will accept it. I'll just read the next one as well. Yad karoshi yadashnasi, yad jahosi dadashi yat tapasha shikuntaya, tad kurusha madarpanam. Whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer or give away, and whatever austerity you should perform, do that, O son of Kunti, as an offering to me. So, Srila Prabhupada explained, first off, we see here Krishna, he's offering a very simple process for the practice of devotional service. And actually, anyone can do this. Krishna's explaining that you've offered me with love and devotion a leaf, a flower, a fruit, or water. And who can't afford a fruit? Who can't afford a glass of water? It's such a simple thing. Although water is getting expensive, but it's quite a simple thing that anyone can access. And so Krishna is saying here that if you offer me these things, then I'll accept them. But he is making a proviso that it has to be done with love and devotion. And it's so important that actually he mentions it twice in this verse. Verses Yome Bhaktya, and this is Taraham Bhakti-Pahatitam. So twice he's explaining this, that it needs to be done with love and devotion. And so often devotees might be a little bit concerned, or we might be a little bit concerned, well, I don't have love and devotion, so what can I do? But we see that it's explained, particularly by Rupa Goswami in his Nectar of Devotion, and Jiva Goswami, he gives a commentary on that verse. He explains this, Anya Abhilasha Shunyan, Gama Kamadhyana Britam, Anukulyana Krishnanu, Shiranam Bhakti Uttama. This verse is explaining devotional service, what is Shiranam Bhakti Uttama, what bhakti is. And Rupa Goswami explains that the devotional service is that which is offered for the pleasure of Krishna, this anukulyena, it's done with a favorable intention. We're trying to please Krishna. And it's an activity that's done for Krishna. Now, Jiva Goswami, he explains this verse in a very interesting way because this verse is actually from the Padma Purana, and he's saying that Shilanam Bhakti Ruttama, this is the highest bhakti. So, Jiva Goswami, in his commentary on this verse, is explaining that bhakti has different aspects. It has its primary aspects, and it has its secondary aspects. And he explains that if we act for Krishna, when we do something for Krishna in a favorable manner, these are the primary aspects of bhakti. So it means a simple thing like, if we offer a glass of water with the intention of trying to please Krishna, this is devotional service. It may not be devoid of ulterior motive. It may not be devoid of desire for knowledge or material profit, but it's still devotional service. And Krishna says, I will accept. So he's making it very easy for anyone. Even like Prabhupada tells, didn't tell a story. There was an interaction one time with a young child at the time. I think she's a grown-up lady now, but a young child at the time. Her name was Saraswati. And one time she bought a flower for Srila Prabhupada. And Prabhupada was so pleased that she was offering this flower out of devotion. And he was saying, oh, you've brought this for me? And he was encouraging her very much in her devotion. Because it may be a simple offering, it may not have much value, but she's done it with the intention of trying to please Srila Prabhupada. So the same for us. It doesn't matter what you bring for Krishna. I mean, obviously it needs to fit within certain guidelines, but the point is, if we bring something for Krishna with the intention to try to please him, or if we have Krishna, deities of Krishna or Lord Chaitanya or whatever at home, and we make an offering with the intention of trying to please the Lord, then he'll accept that because this is an offering of love. And Krishna's explaining here in this section that the result of this love, I'll get to the verse in a minute, but in the previous verses in this chapter and in previous chapters, he explained the results of worshipping demigods and also trying to improve oneself in this material world. And ultimately, as Krishna explains earlier on, this karma bandhana, it leads to bondage in this material world. Because what happens is when we do things for the pleasure of the devatas, or we do things for our own pleasure, we become attached to the results that come from this, this endeavor. But if we do things for Krishna's pleasure, not only does he accept these things, but he frees us from the attachment. This offering of love, it frees us from the attachment of trying to exploit and enjoy this material world. And actually speaking, this is what brings us bondage in this material world, is that we're trying to control, we're trying to enjoy. And as long as we have this intention, or this, make this endeavor to try to enjoy in this material world, or to try to exploit this material world, it will bring about bondage. And more and more and more, we will try to exploit the situation in this material world. So Krishna is giving us an easy solution here. Very easy solution. All you have to do is offer, with love and devotion, simple things, like a leaf. I mean, it's so easy to get a leaf, and particularly this refers to a tulsi leaf. It's so easy. Anyone can grow tulsi at home. And tulsi, very special plant. Tulsi's got many different names, but one of the names of tulsi is Bhakti Pradayani. So Bhakti Pradayani means that person who bestows bhakti, who bestows devotion. Simply by growing tulsi and every day putting a little bit of water on the soil and circumambulating tulsi, one develops love. Devotional, because sometimes, folks have this idea that devotional service is very difficult. It can be if you're a complicated person, but actually devotional service is very simple. Anyone can practice devotional service. Even a child can practice devotional service. All you have to do is want to try to please Krishna. And in the Bhagavad Gita, he spells out very clearly how to please him. You offer him with love and devotion a leaf, a flower, a fruit, or water. Then in the next verse, he goes on to explain that whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer or give away, you do that, O son of Kunti, as an offering to me. So we see here, Krishna is explaining he says, Yad Karoshi, whatever you do, it doesn't matter, whatever it is that you do that for him. So this is a very interesting statement by Krishna, because I was explaining this yesterday in the class I was giving in the morning, that we see that sometimes, devotees, when they're practicing Krishna consciousness at home, they draw a distinction between their work life and their devotional life, or their home life and their devotional life. But Krishna, and it creates perplexity for them. It creates a problem, because they can't, I'm doing this, but I'm becoming entangled, and but Krishna's saying, no, whatever you do it for me. So it means you're working your job. You go do the 9 to 5 or whatever it is you do here in America, and you do that for Krishna. Then that becomes bhakti, because you're doing it for Krishna. You're raising a family. You do that for Krishna. We don't do it for our own personal enjoyment. We do it as a service for Krishna. And in this way, rather than this activity being something that causes us to be bound up in this material world, this activity becomes something that causes us to become liberated in this material world. And it's a simple thing. Srila Prabhupada would often say that, as I was saying before, because sometimes we find that people think Krishna consciousness is very complicated, very difficult. And, if you get into the scriptures and you read, some of the rules that are involved in, for instance, doing deity worship, okay, you might consider it's difficult. But Srila Prabhupada, he would often explain Krishna consciousness in the simplest of terms. And it's meant to be easy to practice. It's not meant to be a complicated thing, but because sometimes we get caught up in descriptions of rules and regulations, it becomes overly complicated. Yet he explains that Krishna consciousness is a simple thing. It just means taking the I out of everything, like me, taking me out of the center of everything and putting Krishna in the center of everything. So it just means changing the focus. It doesn't mean changing what you're doing. You still eat, you still sleep, you still go to work, you still, all these different things. But instead of doing it for yourself, you do it for the satisfaction of Krishna. So it's really just a simple thing, changing your motive in life. And this is a liberating act. It means that you'll, rather than becoming caught up in trying to exploit, as I was saying before, exploiting the resources of material nature, your focus is trying to please God. And in this way, not only do you become freed from bondage in this material world, but actually you become happy, you become peaceful. And we see that, here in the material world, everyone is striving for that. They're striving for happiness. There's so many shops around here selling all different types of products. And, people believe that if they go and buy, I was just down at CVS yesterday just to get some Ziploc bags. And I saw the people in front of me, the mother was buying the child all this plastic stuff, a bucket with all these toys in it and stuff like that, thinking it's going to make the child happy. And anyone who's got children knows how long that lasts for. They get the bucket home, they play with it for about 5 minutes, and they get bored, they want to do something else. They're no longer happy. And this is the nature of happiness in the material world. It's very temporary. It comes and it goes, just like the seasons, they come and go. Same with these material happinesses, they come and go. So, and even, people are trying to find peace in this material world. And I think it's just over the river, they have the United Nations, this big, huge building, which is dedicated to finding peace in the material world. But has there ever been a time in the last 100 years where there's been peace in the material world? And since the United Nations has been created, has there ever been a time where there's been no war in this material world? Right now, there's a number of wars going on. I mean, there's 2 prominent wars, but there's many smaller wars going on. And it's always been the case. Because the real reason is they don't understand who they are. They don't understand what their position is in this material world. They're looking for their happiness in the wrong place. They're looking for happiness in material things, but material things are temporary. Therefore, the happiness that's derived from these material things is also temporary. And this is the nature of happiness in this material world. It's dukhalayam and it's a shashvatam. The material world, it's temporary, therefore it brings misery. Because it's like you have something, some possession, you're attached to that possession, but because it's temporary, it means it will dwindle and vanish. And then you lament the loss. This is just the nature of trying to find happiness in this material world. But the Bhagavad Gita, it's leading us to an eternal concept of happiness, not looking for happiness in material things, but looking for happiness within the self and the relationship of the self with God. And if we are able to practice that relationship with God, if we're able to develop that relationship with God, we find we'll become happy, we'll become peaceful. And we all want to be happy, yeah? Is there anyone here who doesn't want to be happy?
Yes.
You don't want to be happy?
I want to be happy.
Yeah, you want to be happy. Everyone wants to be happy. Maybe it's my Australian accent you didn't understand so well. But that's the nature. Everyone, and because the nature of the jiva is described in the Vedanta Sutra, is an anandamoy vyasat. We're seeking pleasure. That's our nature. We can't help it. That's who we are. We're pleasure seeking. But in order to find pleasure, you need to know where to look. It's just like, if you get yourself a brand new car, such a nice car, and you go out and you clean it every day, but is that giving you pleasure ultimately? Maybe you get some pleasure because it's new and you get to clean it, but ultimately it's not going to be satisfying. And you see, some people have so many cars, or they buy new cars regularly because they're not happy. They want a better car, a faster car, a bigger car. The family grows and they want to put more children in the car and things like that. So ultimately, even though we may have so many material facilities, it will not bring happiness because we're looking for it in the wrong place. We need to understand where to find our happiness, where to find pleasure. And Krishna explains this very clearly at the end of the 5th chapter. He says, Bhaktanam yakatapasam sarvaloka maheshwaram suridam sarvabhutanam gyatmamam shantim richati. That if one understands that I am the supreme enjoyer, that everything in this material world is meant for God's satisfaction. Why is that? Because it all expands from Him. He explains, Aham savasya prabhu mata sarvam bhatate, that I'm the source of everything. So it means if He's the source, He's also the proprietor. He owns everything. And this is the next statement he says, Sarva Bhaktanam yakatapasam sarva loka maheshwaram, that I'm the supreme proprietor, Maha Ishvara, I'm the great controller of all the planets and all the living entities on the planets. They're all his because they expand from him. And then he says, Suridam Sarva Bhutanam, that I'm the supreme well-wishing friend of all living entities. So this Suhrit, so Hrit means like the heart. Su is a word that amplifies or increases. So Suhridam, he's the supreme well-wishing friend. He has your best interest at heart. In Sanskrit language, there's three, there's many words, but there's three main words which talk about friendly relationship. There's Bandhu, there's Mitra, and there's Suhrit. So Bandhu means like, an equal kind of relationship. Whereas Mitra tends to, like friends, Braj Mahan and I, we have like a friendly relationship. We're equal sort of friends. Whereas Mitra refers to someone like, an uncle and the friendly relationship they'll have with their nephew or their niece or something like that. So elderly, but, friendly relationship. But Suhrit, this means someone who's really got your best interest at heart. And for someone to have their best interest at your best interest at heart, they need to understand what is best for you. And who in this world understands what's really best for us? Only that person who knows Krishna can understand what's best for us. Because actually, most of these relationships we have with different people are based on the body. And as we've been saying, these things are temporary. They come, they go. And if we place all our faith in the body or all our attention in the body, ultimately we're going to be disappointed because, again, the body is temporary. Anyone who's over 60 is very aware of that. Once you get past 60, the senses stop. Like I didn't used to wear these things, but now I can't see without them. I can't read. I look at the book and it's all just lines, like fuzzy lines to me. So I need to wear glasses so we can see the body's failing. And as you get older and older, it fails more and more. It's temporary. It's just the nature of everything in this material world. Even like this, all these things here, this microphone stand, the microphone, it's not going to last forever. Even if you look after it very well, it will deteriorate. This thing will deteriorate. It's just the nature of everything in this material world. And if we're looking for, satisfaction, if we're looking, we're basing our friendships, our relationships on the external body, then ultimately that relationship is going to lead to frustration because it's based on a misunderstanding. All our perception of this material world ultimately are based on misunderstandings. It's just like to give a simple example with mathematics. So, when we were children, we had an exercise book. We did our mathematics, and we put a multiplication table at the back. You write it all out, 1 to 12, 1 to 12, and you figure out all the things. And then when you're doing your mathematics, you look, you do your multiplication, you go to the multiplication table at the back, and look, oh, okay, 6 by 6 is 36, and then I can do the equation. But what if I made a mistake on the multiplication table, and I put the 6 by 6 is 38? So every time I did that calculation, looking at that, I would make a mistake. So it's the same here in the material world, is we're all basing our calculations in this material world on a mistaken idea that the body is the self. But actually the body is not the self. The body is just a machine. It's a vehicle that we use to function in the material world. As Krishna explains in the later on in the Gita, he says, Yantra Rudrani Maya, that this body is just a machine. It's a very sophisticated machine. Very, very sophisticated. I mean, have you ever seen any machine manufactured by some engineer or whatever that can do things like the body? Does anyone's car grow hair? And you have to shave it? On the head, you grow. No, machines don't do things like that. Or like if you get an accident, if you're in an accident with it in your car, you have to take it to a shop to get it fixed. But the body, you cut the body and it fixes itself. Very, very sophisticated, very, very elaborate machine. But as with all machines, it has a use-by date basically, and it wears out. But this is the nature of things in this material world. So, as I was saying, is the relationships are based on this concept of the relationship with the body, which is temporary. Therefore, the relationship ultimately will lead to distress in one way or another. But relationship in the spiritual world, or a spiritual relationship, is based on understanding the nature of the self. And Krishna, in the second chapter of the Gita, he very clearly points out that for the body, there's birth and death. It comes and it goes. But for the self, there's neither birth nor death at any time. Has not come into being, does not come into being, will not come into being. It's eternal, ever-existing, primeval, not slain when the body is slain. This is the nature of the self. So if we can base our relationships on this understanding, that, this is an eternal spirit soul, a servant of Krishna. I'm an eternal spirit soul, a servant of Krishna. Then this is going to help us to understand how to relate properly with people, but also what is the best interest of that person. If they don't understand their eternal nature, then by helping them to understand that eternal nature, that's the best thing I can do for somebody. Because in this way, they'll actually become happy. And this is what Krishna says in the final line of this verse from the 5th chapter. He says, Gyatva mam shantim richati. Knowing this, Gyatva. Gya means knowledge, to know. Gyatva mam. Knowing me, mam, me, Krishna says. Shantim richati. Peace they attain. So if we understand Krishna's position as the supreme enjoyer, as the supreme proprietor, and as the only real friend, we actually achieve peace in this world. So this is the foundation, or this needs to be the foundation of all our relationships, is to understand Krishna's position and understand my position in relation to him. And this is what the Bhagavad Gita is explaining. There's 5 primary topics in the Bhagavad Gita. There's knowledge of God, knowledge of the jiva, knowledge of the prakriti, the material energy, and also time and karma. These things are explained in the Bhagavad Gita, and also the interactions between these things. And Krishna is explaining here in this ninth chapter, because it's called the most confidential knowledge, how to become freed from the effects of this material nature. And he's starting to say this, but by offering simple things like leaf, flower, fruit, water to me, I'll accept that. And he says, whatever you do, that means everything you do as an offering for Krishna. You see how everything you're doing is not separate from Krishna. The problem comes is when we start to separate things from God, when we start to see things as separate from God, then it becomes a little confusing. But if we understand that everything is ultimately, it comes from God, therefore it should be offered in his service, then we'll actually understand our situation in this material world. And in the last verse, how long am I supposed to go for?
7:45.
7:45. Oh, I'll leave some time for questions too, I guess. In the last verse, Krishna says, Shubha Shubha Phalerevam Mokshase Kama Bandhanai Sannyasa Yoga Yuktatma Vimukto Mam Pashasi. In this way, you'll be freed from bondage to work and its auspicious and inauspicious results. He doesn't say give up work, because Krishna says you have to work. I mean, who is it in this world doesn't work in one way or another? We all do something. We all have some activity. But the idea is to give up the attachment to the work. And when you work for the pleasure of Krishna, you become freed from the reaction of that work, from the auspicious. He says this subha asubha, auspicious and inauspicious results. And he says, with your mind fixed on me in this principle of renunciation, you'll be liberated, and thus you'll come to me. So this is Krishna's giving a very simple understanding of how to practice Krishna consciousness, or how to act in a way that will help us to become freed from the effects of this material world. And it begins in a very simple way, just by, for instance, at home. Anyone who lives in an apartment, a house, whatever, obviously you're going to eat. So whatever you eat, you offer that to God. When you go to work, you just like one of the devotees yesterday was talking about how, that's Acharya, he goes to work and he comes and he gives donations to the temple. He offers the results of his work. Obviously he doesn't give everything because he needs to maintain himself, but he gives some of the proceeds of his work for the pleasure of Krishna. And in that way, he becomes freed from the bondage or the attachment. Because usually what happens, you go out, you earn money, you get the paycheck, And you think, wow, now I've got some money, I can really do some things in this material world, I can go out and I can enjoy myself. And this leads to bondage, because then you're focusing more and more on how to become happy in this material world. But actually, the reality is, you cannot become happy in this material world because it's not our natural place. You need to understand that this is not our place. Practical example I can think of, I've told this story a few times. When I was a child, I think I was about 4 or 5, something like that. In Australia, they have these, every year they have these agricultural shows where all the farmers come into the town and they show off all their wares, like their pumpkins they grow and their different vegetables and their cows and their sheep and all that sort of stuff. And then in the capital cities of each state, they have a big one where the winners of all those small ones, they come and they again compete. And the one I was living in a city called Melbourne, which is down in the south of Australia. And my parents took me to the Melbourne show. And it was a big deal, it was like huge, hundreds of thousands of people go. And somehow or other, I got separated from my parents. And I was just a little boy, 4 or 5 years old. And initially I thought it was really good, because I got freedom, I can do whatever I like, I can go here, I can go here, I can look at that. But after a while I started to get hungry and I realized I was lost and I didn't know where I was going. So naturally I started to cry. And then I was just, very disturbed because I wanted my mum. And so I'm crying and crying and crying, and finally the police found me, and then they found my parents, and I was reunited with my parents. So I was happy again, And even like when the police found me, I remember the police lady, she was feeding me ice cream. And I'm eating the ice, because she thinks that'll make me happy. I'm eating the ice cream, but still I'm crying, because you never give up a chance for ice cream. But so the point is that when we're in a situation that's not natural, then we become distressed, we become unhappy. And when we get reunited, just like I was reunited with my parents, I became happy again. So if we become reunited with Krishna, if we reawaken our relationship with Krishna, this is our path to happiness. And so this is what Krishna is explaining here, is just work for me. In whatever it is you do that for me. When you want to eat something to eat, just offer it to Krishna. So at home, just you have a simple altar, you might have deities there, you might have pictures there, offer your food to Krishna. Because Krishna explains this in the 3rd chapter of the Gita, that food comes from yajna. Like you perform yajna, it rains. When it rains, grains come. And then from grains you can subsist. But if we eat food that's not offered in sacrifice to Krishna, then Krishna explains, verily we eat only sin. Because ultimately, yajna is meant for the satisfaction of the yajna purush, which is God, Krishna. Krishna, another name of Krishna, is yajna. So we perform yajna for his pleasure. And when we do that, then the results of whatever we offer do not lead to bondage, but they lead to liberation in this material world. So here Krishna is explaining this in a very practical and simple way. You offer him with love and devotion, a leaf, a flower, a fruit, or water. He will ashnami prayatatmani. He says, I'll accept it. It's a simple thing. Whatever you offer with love, he'll accept. And this is whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer or give away, whatever austerities you perform, you do that as an offering to him. So he's covering such a wide range of activities there, and all you have to do is do it for Krishna. And in this way, he says, you'll become freed from the bondage to work, and it's auspicious and inauspicious result, because everything you do has a result, whether it's auspicious or inauspicious. You might do some pious work, there's an auspicious result. You might do something that's impious, and there's an inauspicious result. But the problem is like we see this happens, like with some people, they might be they're philanthropists, and they like to give in charity and stuff, but they can become attached to that because they get a name as being a generous person or a charitable person, whatever like that, and so they're attached to the popularity that comes as a result of that. So they're still attached to the result of good work. But Krishna is saying, if you do it for me, you won't have that attachment. You'll have an attachment for me, which is fine because it's a spiritual attachment. But being attached to things in this material world can bring about great difficulty. So Krishna is explaining here that in these 3 verses, how to become freed from this entangling situation, this material world, in a very, very simple way, which everyone can do. You just have to, and it's not like, that you necessarily have to move into a Hare Krishna temple or shave your head or anything like that. It's just you start by, at home, whatever you cook, you have a small altar there and you offer it to Krishna. Very, very simple thing to do. You just, no, you don't have to have fancy mantras or anything like that. You put it on the altar in front of Krishna, you cook on a plate that's especially for Krishna, and you put there, you ring a bell, you chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Finished. That's all you need to do. Because your intention is you want to offer it to Krishna. You don't taste it before it's offered to him. Yeah? You don't smell it or anything like that. You just cook it and you offer it to him. And then you take the remnants. And this is a very good way of purifying our existence, simply by offering everything we have for the pleasure of Krishna. Okay, I'll finish there. Are there any questions at all? Comments? Anything like that? Yeah.
Hare Krishna, please take my humble obeisances.
Jai Vaishnavi.
Prabhuji, how can we disconnect our material bundles? What is the way? Who can give bhakti directly? Krishna, Radharani can give bhakti to us, or only the devotees can Tulasha Vrinda Devi?
All the above.
How can we get easily the bhakti? And how can disconnect to our material bundles? This Hare Krishna.
So the question was, how do we achieve mukti? Who gives mukti? And how can we become freed from bondage? So I think I was explaining the concept of becoming free from bondage in different ways. The idea is we are bound up in this material world because of our desire to try to enjoy this body, try to enjoy the material nature. And it's in one sense it's like we're a thief because it's not our property. We don't own this body. It's a temporary thing. It's just like, you might work for a wealthy person, right? And they allow you to drive their car, they allow you to live in their home. But if you decide that, well, I'm going to keep this car because I like driving it, then you become a thief. So everything in this material world belongs to Krishna. He says, I'm the supreme proprietor. So if we take these things to try to enjoy them for ourselves, then we become a thief and then we're liable to punishment, which is bondage in this material world. And the way to become free from this bondage is simply by taking these same things and then offering them for Krishna's pleasure. You don't change what you're doing. Just like you cook at home. If you cook for your own enjoyment, that leads to bondage. If you cook for Krishna's pleasure, that leads to liberation. It's the same activity, different motive. So you just do it for Krishna. And in terms of who gives liberation, the holy name gives liberation, the Diksha Guru, the Siksha Guru, Krishna, Radha, the previous acharyas, the 9 processes of devotional service, they all bring about liberation. In this age, the most effective way of achieving liberation is chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. You'll see in the Srimad Bhagavatam, it's constantly glorifying the potency of the holy name. Even we see there's that wonderful story of Ajamil, how he just simply called out the name of Narayan. He was actually calling his son, but because by Krishna's arrangement he named his son Narayan, when he called the holy name of the Lord, it led to his liberation. So yeah, the holy name is very, very powerful. So always chant Hare Krishna. Yeah? Thank you. Anything else?
Thank you so much, Prabhu.
You're welcome. We've got a few minutes left. Yeah. No? Didn't have it. Yeah. Nice loud voice.
You mentioned reading is becoming harder and your practice of devotion is that it's a great model. So is reading the scriptures part of devotion?
He said that you mentioned reading the scriptures. He mentioned that reading the scriptures is becoming more and more difficult. And he said, in your example of devotional service, it's very good. So, is reading the scriptures included in devotional?
Yes, very much so. You need knowledge. Without knowledge, you cannot understand the process of bhakti. Because what I'm saying to you is just, I'm basically coming from Bhagavad Gita. And we're very fortunate because, Bhagavad Gita, for instance, this version here is called Bhagavad Gita as it is. It was translated by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivinoda Swami Prabhupada. When he first came to America, he went to Butler, Pennsylvania, then he came here to New York. And when he was here in New York, he published his Bhagavad Gita. And he made a comment that currently, at that point in time, there were, I think he said, 800 editions of Bhagavad Gita, and not one pure devotee resulted from all those editions of Bhagavad Gita. But now, he said, I have done this my own humble endeavor, and so many pure devotees have resulted from that. So because he has maintained the original intention of the author, the original intention of Krishna, he's maintained the message as it is. But what happens in this age, it's an age of cheating. There's a lot of cheating religions in this age, where people present themselves as being knowledgeable in scriptures, as being great transcendentalists and things like that, but they're just out to exploit you and just to enjoy you. The whole point of the Bhagavad Gita is not to present some unusual philosophy, but it's to help you to understand who you are and who God is and what is your relationship with God. Because when you understand who you are, when you understand your relationship to God, when you understand who God is, you know how to act. So Scripture is very, very important because it gives us knowledge. Knowledge of ourselves, knowledge of God. Without that knowledge, we don't know how to act. So very, very important to, try to regularly read Scriptures.
Can you be in bliss when you're reading the scriptures?
Sorry?
Can you be in bliss while reading the scriptures?
Can you be in bliss while reading the scriptures?
I hope so. I'm trying to get that. I mean, because there's many verses that indicate this. There's it mentions what's that verse? Vasudeva Kata Ruchi Shanmahat Sevyam Pundit. It mentions how Vasudeva Kata Ruchi means taste. Yeah. So by discussing topics of Krishna, by talking topics of Krishna, Shushusho Sharadanasha Vasudeva Kata Ruchi. Shanmahat Sevyam Pundartirtha Nishevana. It mentions how one derives great satisfaction or bliss from talking about Krishna. This is from the first canto of the Bhagavatam. And then in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna himself, he says, there's Kathayantas Chimam Nityam Tushanti Charamanti Cha, that his devotees get great satisfaction and bliss, he mentions the word bliss, by always enlightening one another and conversing about me. So you find that, if we cultivate our study of scriptures, we can develop a satisfaction, a taste from studying scriptures. But the key to this is Shanmahat Sevyam, to serve the great souls. And we're very fortunate we have the opportunity, we can serve Srila Prabhupada by distributing his transcendental books. And he is certainly a great soul. So there's many wonderful opportunities we have in this Krishna consciousness movement for cultivating this, as you say, this bliss from studying the scriptures. Because the scriptures, it's not like, I don't know what sort of books you've ever read, but, there was some books that were quite famous a few years ago, these Harry Potter books. I mean, you might have read it once or twice, but how many times? When I was a kid, it was The Lord of the Rings. It was the big book. I read it once and that was enough, But the Bhagavad Gita, I can't remember how many times I read the Bhagavad Gita. I read it 40 or 50 times. And every time I read the Bhagavad Gita, I'm getting newer and newer information from it. So it's because it's transcendental knowledge. And when you engage with transcendental knowledge, it helps us to reawaken our transcendental nature, and we start to understand who we are. So this is very, very important, is to read the scriptures. Yeah? Very, very important. Hare Krishna. Yes, Mataji. Becomes what?
Mechanical.
Okay. Did you hear all that?
Yeah, it's like when the guru is visiting, you increase the standard by new pots and more offerings. But then after you go back to more normal standard. Is there any danger in that?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because sometimes when you see what happens, it's like when the guru's in town, like when you live at a temple and the guru's in town, where did all these devotees come from? I've never seen them before, you know? And then when the guru goes away, they just fade back into the woodwork kind of thing. But, I mean, the thing is like, the Krishna consciousness movement, like a community, if you have a spiritual community, you're going to find people at all different levels of spiritual life, all different degrees of attraction. And that's good. But as like preachers of Krishna consciousness, we need to, and Maharaj, Bhagavan Swami Keshav Maharaj was talking about this morning, we have to learn how to increase people's attraction in Krishna consciousness. And also we need to do the same for ourselves. We need to be introspective and look at, how am I progressing in Krishna consciousness? And one thing that's very, very important in our Krishna consciousness is to have loving exchanges with devotees. So, and part of that loving exchanges is guyamakati prichati, is that we reveal our minds to our friends confidentially and we inquire confidentially from them. Because it's a really important thing is to have a support network where you can get feedback on your practice of bhakti. Because we tend to be a little bit sort of not so objective when it comes to the self. Often we think we're doing okay, but we may not be doing okay. Especially when we're struggling in Krishna consciousness, we don't see where the challenges are. But if we have people around us who are able to give us feedback, that's very helpful. Because we always need to be on the lookout for challenges that we may be facing, and also how to deal with those challenges and how to conquer those challenges. And also another way of also dealing with that is to be always hearing lectures from Prabhupada and from advanced devotees, and reading, studying the books. Then you'll things will be revealed to you. Revelation is a very important part of a spiritual process. It's there in Christianity. It's there in Gaudiya Vaishnavism. It's a very important part of spiritual process is revelation. But revelation comes from practice. You have to apply yourself to the process and then revelation will come. Does that answer your question? But even like when you're doing something like making offerings to the deities, and you might find they're a bit mechanical, just keep doing it. Because in the beginning stages, there may not be so much bhakti, but through the practice, the bhakti develops. Because it says Karanoyoday, it's there in the heart and it comes out. Through the practice, it becomes revealed. So just keep doing it. It'll become. Yeah. Okay. Hare Krishna, thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki, Shri Radha Govinda ki, Jai Nitai Gaur Premanandi. There's no switch.